Hello everyone, my name is Alyan and today I am here again with another special guest, Mr. Mark. So, hello sir, how are you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm here. Nice to let me make sure I can hear you. One moment, let me turn this crazy. Alexa, stop. Sorry about that. My electronic device went off.
No problem. So, how are you?
I'm okay.
Great, wonderful. Okay, so first of all, I am very thankful to you for giving me your precious time for interview.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, sir. So, before moving on a question, can you please introduce yourself?
Oh, my name's Mark Novak. I'm a guy who lives in Fort Worth, Texas. I work in IT. I'm right now between positions. I'm looking for another position, so I might get a phone call interruption any second because it gets a little bit hectic when you're trying to do a transition and all that. So I hope you understand. I work, yeah. So.
Great, wonderful, sir. Okay, so my first question in your screen, Mr. Mark, can you share with us a bit about your journey in developing a clear and distinct voice in a noisy world?
Oh, well, basically, I've been in Toastmasters for more than 25 years, and I get an opportunity to develop my message in meetings in which, you get to try out various messages before prime time. And then when you're in the work world, then it's an opportunity. What you normally have to do is you just normally have to go ahead and do things. You normally have to be able to take a few chances and be willing to work with the tools that are available. That's how I've been successful in the past, or that is what's at least worked for me in the past. I can't necessarily say I'm a stunning success.
Great, wonderful, sir. Okay, so my next question in your screen, what inspired you to become someone whose voice stand out amidst the noise?
Well, what inspired me was more or less that I grew up in a family in which everyone was standing out of their own way. But they were doing things in order to make sure that things were successful. We would, my sisters would stay focused on their particular areas. My dad would stay focused on his area. My mother decided to go out in the working world after she had gotten us to a reasonable age, and then went on to do other things. So I learned from the example of the people around me that you need to go ahead and do that and and move forward. So that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Wonderful, sir. Okay, so how do you define having a clear voice, both literal and metaphorical sense, and why is it important?
Okay, and in terms of having a clear voice, you talk in the active voice. You basically take responsibility for what you're doing. You basically say, "This is what's happening. This is what I am doing." You don't have things happen to you. You don't have things happen upon you. So you're speaking what you feel, keeping in mind the audience and the limitations of what can be done, and then you move forward. You move forward from there. If you have a disagreement with someone or something, you are respectful of their opinion, but and you're willing to be flexible, but you always stay focused on the communication side.
Great, wonderful, sir. Amazing. So, can you provide example of situation where having a clear voice has made a significant impact on your life or the life of others?
Well, one of the things was is that when I was working for Bell Helicopter, we had some issues in the planning system. They basically had they basically had a something that basically said that we needed to that we needed to be able to adjust the system. There were some particular tools, and they were having some issues, and I had an idea about how to do the particular process, but other people seemed to be skeptical. So what I did was is that I wrote up a memo, and I basically had the managers sign on to the memo that basically had the case for why we were needing to do this and what were going to be the benefits of doing this particular process. And with that memo, I was able to go on to get into the offices and do a one-on-one discussion about doing that to and it made a difference. So we're able to move forward with something rather than waiting for another piece of technology that might have taken a number of years to come into play, which makes an enormous difference. Every day counts in manufacturing.
Wonderful, sir. Okay, so what strategies or practice do you use to maintain clarity in your communication and your life purpose?
Well, a lot of times I will spend times writing out ideas on longhand on paper. And that sounds a little bit weird and it sounds a little bit anachronistic, but when you write out your ideas on paper, you get a triple reinforcement. You have your hand writing, your eye is seeing, and you are thinking about it at the same time. When you write things out on paper, an awful lot of times it can work things out. Now, with ideas, a lot of times I want to work things out on paper before I bounce ideas off of other individuals, because when you bounce ideas off of other individuals, your conversation can change your relationship with them. So you want to be able to edit your ideas and make sure that you have a clear proposal before you share it with other people. And also it gets the crazier stuff flushed out of your system.
Amazing. Okay, so how do you navigate the challenges of finding your voice and staying true to it in a world filled with distraction and noise?
Okay, well, in terms of finding your voice, a lot of times what you have to realize is that when everyone is saying an awful lot of things around you, that you might have a visceral response to a particular area, but that visceral response is not something that would work in the long term. What you normally would want to do is you want to spend some time, you want to step back and think. I always joked about it, and we had this. It was adopted from a phrasing of a law that was being proposed, in which it was a 24-hour waiting period. And I basically jokingly came up with this idea that was later adopted by some others and was later published in a magazine article that says that you should have a 24-hour, give yourself a 24-hour waiting period before you respond to an email that hits you, that hits your passion, particularly if you're mad about something. That gives you time to wait. So stepping back, being able to write out things and not commit it to your immediate reaction is normally how you can develop your own voice, because you don't want to necessarily be along with the crowd. It's okay to agree with the crowd, but you have to have your own reason to agree with the crowd, not because everyone's doing it. And you're frozen.
Yes, sir. Okay, so what role does technology play in developing a clear voice, and how can individual becoming more authenticate in their communication?
Well, a clear voice or authenticity is the key, but a lot of times, in order to be authentic, you have to be able to figure out who you are first. So, exploring what is within you and knowing yourself is the key to being authentic. So, when you're thinking things through, giving yourself a chance to grow up, and ironically, not quote unquote growing up too fast. That's one of the things that happens is that you don't want to necessarily you don't want to necessarily commit to particular things too soon. You want to be able to give yourself a chance. When I was in high school and when I was in junior high, I gave myself a chance to think of several different roles that I could have, but I didn't latch on to the idea that I was going to be a doctor or I was going to be a lawyer. I allowed myself to have some time. I allowed myself to play with a few things and do some small things which allow you to discover your limits. When you're on the debate team and you find out what triggers you on the debate team. You can find out stuff about yourself. Doesn't necessarily mean that you want to be a lawyer, but it gives you a chance to explore those particular areas. So being able to not necessarily grow too fast is a key to being able to make the best long-term choices.
Okay, so enjoying life early way is a part of your life philosophy. How do you integrate this? How do you integrate this into your daily life?
Well, okay. What I would normally do is that in terms of being able to integrate my philosophy with my daily life, I will get up a little bit early in order to think about what I'm going to be doing that particular day. I like to plan out and see what's going on in the world, giving myself a little bit of space before I move on with a day. So if I had to get when I was working just last week, I would need to be in work at about 7 o'clock in the morning, but I would get up at about 4:30 in the morning, give myself a chance to look around and see what was happening in the world, update on a few things, explore a few things, and then gradually be able to uh, gradually be able to bring the day into focus in which my beliefs would be integrated with the things that I'm doing that day.
Amazing, sir. Okay, so can you share some experience or moment in your life that have reinforced your belief in enjoying life journey?
Okay, a number of years ago, I started going to some international conventions, and I went to the Toastmasters International Convention a few occasions. And there were times in which, there was a lot of what I expected. There was a lot of the rah rah and all the things that would be associated with the worldwide organization. But what I found was that there were some informal gatherings, particularly with some of the international Toastmasters from Europe, that they would get together and they would sing and they would discuss the day's events. And I found myself gravitated to those particular events because it was part of the unplanned part of the convention that seemed to have the most meaning. And then when you saw what people were thinking, you saw that they were sharing many of the same ideas and some different ideas, but complementary ideas with yourself. That's where you find that reinforcement to your journey. You see other people on their journeys, and that's just a small part.
Amazing, wonderful. Okay, so in a world that often prioritize speed and efficiency, how do you strike a balance between staying focused and savoring life moment?
Well, you give yourself time to be particular things. You give yourself time to be that person who can. You give yourself time. You will compartmentalize. There are times in which I have planned downtime. There are times in which I have a segment of time, particularly like on the weekend, on a Saturday or a Sunday, in which I'm saying I'm going to be going here. I'll be going to the Kimball Art Museum. I'm going to be going into downtown Dallas. I'm going to be doing this, and I will plan my day around that particular event. So you have a window of time, and then you have a window of time in which you do the things that you need to do. So sometimes the things will mix, but a lot of times what you're doing is that I'm blocking out particular times, and I block out time not to be blocked out, and then I block out time in which the priority is to get things done.
Great, sir. Okay, so what advice do you have for individual who may be struggling to find joy and fulfillment in their daily life?
Well, what you have to do is that you have to find some moments in which you can just allow yourself to think, that you just need to have some time during the day in which there's quiet. A matter of fact, that's one of the things that I would say is that in order to find enjoyment, you need to be able to set yourself into a neutral mode. I refer to it. It's literally a minute of silence. If you can have a minute of silence, that's great. But I would normally give myself a half an hour or an hour in the day in which I want to be away from things and then come back to them on my own terms. It's that reset, and then that's how I can map out being able to find a moment of enjoyment. That a lot of times you just need to cut away the noise, and then you can figure out what you can do during those days. So no matter how busy the day is, you need to have that moment in which you're pausing, hopefully for 30 minutes or an hour. But if you can just find a minute to pause during that day, that can be the key to keeping things from going too crazy.
Amazing. Okay, so how do you handle adversity or challenging situation while maintaining your positive outlook on life?
Well, basically, what I do is that when things go wrong, I will immediately go into a mode in which I'm a problem solver. I will basically say that I will give myself a few minutes away, but I will also say that if there is a problem that needs to be dealt with, I'm going to be starting from that very morning to deal with that particular situation and doing what I need to do in order to address it. You have to be careful, because if you procrastinate and stay away from something too long, the problem becomes periodically bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you're facing a challenge, the best thing to do is that if that challenge is really important, you need to make it a priority, and that needs to be the first thing that you're addressing.
Okay, great. So, what practice or habit have helped you maintain mental clarity and emotional well-being?
Well, one of the things that I also do during the day is I find that if I don't do this, it becomes a big deal and it can bother me. Is that I will give myself a nice long walk. I will walk for about 3 or 4 miles on a given day, and then that gives me a chance to walk about nature, basically see things, and then in seeing things you can come to terms with things. It also helps. It relieves stress, and it takes away energy, so you have a lot of built up energy inside of you. And being able to walk and just see scenery, I always will walk and take a different route every time. The times aren't necessarily predictable, the route isn't necessarily predictable, but the key is to do things. Then I'll pause, I might take a picture of something or two. I keep track of things, and if I can walk 3 or 4 miles in a given day, sometimes more, that makes a big difference on that particular day for my mental health and my well-being.
Wonderful. Okay, so how do you approach personal growth and self improvement in your journey of enjoying life along the way?
Well, I've subscribed to a number of newspapers, and I will always make a note of reading particular sections. I will read all of the articles in the New York Times science section in a given week, because I've always a priori because I like to prioritize the science and health news, because health news obviously it makes you aware of public health issues and personal health issues, and science because a lot of times you need to be aware of the world around you, even though some of the things may never affect you. I keep abreast of the technology and my work environment. I will find a pretense to try to learn, try to keep up with the latest technologies. Um, to a certain extent, so I'm aware of those particular things, and then I will be aware of the local around surroundings. A lot of times I don't like to watch television. I like to read about news, because in reading about news you can integrate it. It is a slower input, and there's less of a visceral response.
Great, sir. Awesome. Okay, so are there specific mentor or role models who have influenced your perspective on life and clarity of voice?
Yeah, well, obviously my parents. My father, he worked really hard through example. He would do various things for me. He would follow through, and I always followed his life template. Is very important. Um, there were some people that I met early on when I started working at Bell Helicopter that had certain perspectives on things that was helpful. And then some of the people that I'd met through the Toastmasters organization, people who have had different life paths, that a lot of times within a community club in the Toastmaster organization, I've ran across a couple of people who have done things. Some people are more ambitious, some people are less ambitious, but through their living and through interacting with them, I've been able to find good mentors and mentees. I can't say that any one of them have been a mentor and mentee formally, but there have been a few of them which I've been able to have ongoing discussions and contact with informally throughout the years, which has been really beneficial.
Right, amazing, sir, wonderful. Okay, so can you provide insight into the connection between having a clear voice and effective leadership or communication?
Uh, yes, being able to be a leader basically means that you are conscious of what people are doing. Now, a leader can theoretically take people where they didn't plan to go, but a leader really doesn't want to take people to a place that they don't want to go. So a leader needs to be able to inspire. Now, formal leadership can technically coerce someone into doing particular things, and that's not wise in the long run. In the long run, you need for people to be able to buy in. And part of that is to be able to sell what for people to buy what you're selling, because it is very rare circumstance that you are in a leadership position in which you are literally in a bubble or unapproachable. The people around you are not going to work very hard if they are not inspired by you, and they're not going to be inspired unless and until you can sell and communicate clearly where you are going with them. So you need to have a connection with the particular individuals. You need to have them to have a buy-in if they're not going to do more than just go through the motions in helping you out.
Wonderful. Okay. So what are some project initiative you are currently involved in that align with your philosophy of enjoying life and maintaining a clear voice?
Okay, some of the things that I'm involved in is that I'm a member of a local Toastmaster club, and I help them. And I basically am responsible for running their Zoom meetings, because they basically have some people who are visiting the hospital as members, but we also run the hospital. We also run the meeting as a hybrid, so being able to bring out and communicate. So we have some people who have logged on from around the world during our Toastmaster meeting, being able to communicate, being able to be members. I found that was in a line. I've also reached out to other individuals within the organization. I've helped organize particular events. There are times in which they need me to teach particular classes, and I've volunteered to teach particular classes in the past. I'd volunteered to raise money for charities, and help the local school organization raising money. So there have been some smaller leadership roles in which I've helped out, and in helping others, you end up helping yourself a little bit. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Great. Okay. So how can individual develop the skills necessary to cut through the noise in their own life and make a positive impact?
Okay, to cut through the noise, basically what you have to do is that you have to be willing to step back from the conversations. That a lot of times you just have to check your emotions. You have to see, are you reacting viscerally to a particular thing? Why are you acting a particular area? In order to develop, you actually, and quite frankly, need to have enough sleep. A lot of times people become very annoyed, irritated, and things can really affect them if they do not have enough rest. So if there is an opportunity to take a break and be able to get that sleep that you need, be able to take a break from something, there are times in which I remember that there were coworkers who were yelling at me, and I just basically said, I need to take some time off, and I basically broke off the conversation. I left for a few minutes, and then I came back, because that gives you control of the situation. It allows you to have a pause on things and keep things from growing or ratcheting up. So that's basically what I've got to keep that clear voice. You just gotta allow for some silences and be able to listen to your inner voice.
Great, sir. Awesome. Really. Okay. So my last question is, in your screen, Mr. Mark, if you could share one piece of wisdom or a mantra that includes your approach to life and communication, what would it be?
Okay, well, Joseph Campbell would have said, "Follow your bliss," which is basically saying, find the things that you like and follow them. But that's sort of that's an easy thing, but that's also a convenient thing because very few people have the luxury of literally following your bliss. If you can, go for it. But I would basically say that a better perspective is to look at things as a never-ending sense of the possible. That that no matter how dire things look, that you should be able to look at a situation and you should be able to see possibilities that aren't necessarily obvious from the start. And a lot of times when people say that I'm lucky this unexpected thing happened, that a lot of times the things that are unplanned are more positive than the things that people want it to happen. Sometimes that is because the possibilities underneath what has happened to you are better than some of the hypothetical things that you would imagine you could be doing if you were left to your own devices. So the never ending sense of the possible, I believe that was a quote from Dorothy DeLay, who used to be a teacher at Juilliard, who would patiently do that. And she was also one of those people who was a listen, let people do what they want, and then respond and bring people back to reality, bring them back to what is possible.
Amazing, wonderful. So I am again very thankful to you, Mr. Mark, for sharing your knowledge, sharing your experience with us. I hope everyone learned something new with your talk, with your speech. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Thank you so much, Mr. Mark.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome. And my apology for being impatient with you earlier. It's just been a hectic day, but thank you. I appreciated this, and I'll then maybe be in touch with you sometime in the future. Thank you. Bye.
Yes, thank you so much.